It's very popular at the moment and has been popular for some time in the New Age scene anyway. This idea of finding your inner goddess and working with your inner goddess, and even working with the various different goddesses as if they are psychological aspects of ourselves and psychological aspects only. So I've heard a lot of women who are working within this realm. They may work with retreats, courses, where they're helping women touch base with their inner Aphrodite or their inner Athena or their inner whoever. And it's very popular and a lot of women seem to be going for it. However, from a Wiccan point of view, it's almost like they're not really getting it when it comes to working with deity, because our deities, to us anyway, are more than just psychological archetypes. And whilst I have certainly gone through the psychological archetype model myself when I was transitioning from the programming of Monotheism into Polytheism, once I really started to embrace the idea of the gods and goddesses being energy, entities, consciousness in and of themselves and not a part of my personality, then things really started to open up for me. So in this video, I wanted to talk about the difference between the archetypal model of gods and goddesses and the actual true polytheistic model of working with gods and goddesses. But before I do, hi, I'm Sandra from MysteryWitchSchool.com. If you're new to Wicca, or maybe not new to Wicca, you just like to listen to other witches talk, hit the subscribe button and the notification bell so that you don't miss any videos. I especially work with newbie witches in helping you make sense of the craft and to actually get down and start practicing the craft so that you can use it to connect more with who you truly are, as well as to connect to nature and the divine. So this video is going to be about the inner goddess and what does that mean. And this is coming from my own experience and my own point of view. And I know that there are a lot of other people out there who have different experiences and different points of view. So when I first came to the craft, I'd come from a Christian background. Christianity is a monotheistic religion, so in Christianity you only have like one God. And when you come from an Abrahamic tradition, which they all are monotheistic, it's very difficult to really understand what polytheism is. So this is the belief in many gods. And of course, we've also had it drilled into us that believing in many gods is also a really bad thing. So it's hard to get our heads around. And even the atheists will see polytheism as being something that's almost less than monotheism, because the concept of believing in many gods and goddesses seems even more ridiculous to them than monotheism does. So it's really tough when you are walking the pagan path and walking the Wiccan path and you start to connect and want to work with the various different deities, because you've got all of this programming in your subconscious mind that has you so seeing the world in this monotheistic viewpoint that it's very hard to understand, well, how do you work your way around this polytheism? In the New Age scene, because it is still very monotheistic, the whole idea of working with gods and goddesses in particular has kind of been reduced to like an archetypal model. So people have always been attracted still to the gods and goddesses and still talk about the gods and goddesses, yet not really understanding how to connect with them outside of seeing them as a psychological model for our own personalities, that they are projections of ourselves rather than them being more like aspects of this whole unified consciousness of which we are all part of. So true paganism, true polytheism isn't the archetypal model at all. It is actually really relating to deities as beings in and of themselves. When I look at the whole Wiccan thing, where in the circle, in a traditional circle, at least the tradition that I was initiated into, when we were passing around the cakes and ale, sometimes we would wish good things for people, but often we would say, thou art God or thou art goddess. And that's recognizing, of course, that we are all gods and goddesses too, that we are all divine beings. But my divinity is within my higher self and my experience of my true self. My divinity isn't Hecate, it isn't Athena, it isn't any of the deities. Whereas from a psychological point of view, people are talking about their inner Aphrodite, or their inner Hera, or their inner whoever. And it's like, that's not really how we work in traditional Wicca anyway. Whilst we can certainly ask the deities to lend us their energy and powers in certain ways, and we can invoke the goddesses into ourselves so that we can work with their aspects and cultivate those aspects within ourselves. They're the aspects that we cultivate within ourselves with help from the gods and goddesses. They're not the gods and goddesses themselves within us. Because what the psychological model does is it reduces the gods and goddesses to being basically ourselves and just expressions of our personality. And while when you look at the myths and the stories, you can certainly see the human aspects in there. From a pagan point of view, they're more than that. If you're looking for your inner goddess or your inner god, or you're wanting to find the divine feminine or the divine masculine, it's really about your experience of your higher self, your true self, and how you manifest these qualities yourself in the world. And you can have help from various different deities to do that. But really, it's about your experience with your true self. I no more have Hecate, an inner Hecate, than I have an inner cat. I have me and my experience of my true self and how I'm connected to all of these. I'm connected to my cat, and I'm connected to Hecate if I want to be, and am anyway. But it's not like they are just psychological aspects of myself, right? My cat is my cat, and she is not just a projection of my psychology, she is my cat. And that's also how I relate to Hecate or Isis or any of the other deities out there, is that they're not just projections of my own psychology, they are actually beings in and of themselves. And one of the reasons why in Mystery Witch School 101 I do get people working with deities in the course is so that you can have that experience of working with the deities and understand the experience of working with them as beings in and of themselves, and not just psychological projections of our own stuff or our own desires. The whole thing nowadays, when I hear about people talking about the divine feminine and discovering the divine feminine within, it's kind of like, well, we're divine beings. And it's not about discovering our divinity, it's just about expressing it and getting to know it. We have the divine feminine and divine masculine in all of us. It's part of the principle of gender. So it's just about experience who we are as spiritual beings. And when we're talking about gods and goddesses and wanting to connect with, you know, the aspects of Aphrodite or the aspects of Apollo or where they fit in, we work with them to help us cultivate our own aspects that are like theirs. So Aphrodite has certain aspects. We can have certain aspects of Aphrodite too. We may just need to learn how to express them. The same with the gods. They have certain aspects and attributes that we may be very attracted to and that we may want to express within ourselves. But we're not going to be expressing theirs. We're going to be expressing our way of expressing it and working with them to help us express our way of expressing those aspects, rather than just seeing Cernunnos or Athena or whichever deities you're working with as being just projections of our own psychology. It is becoming definitely more common within the pagan community and the witch community to work with deities and to see deities as being beings in and of themselves. But there was a time in the past when the psychological model or the archetypal model was quite popular. And I certainly went through that era, because it is hard to get your head around polytheism when you've been programmed to see the world in a monotheistic viewpoint. But the deities, from my experience, are not just psychological archetypes that we're projecting out into the world. They are beings who are quite willing and able to help us express those parts of ourselves, So I hope that that makes sense to you, especially if you're being a little confused about what you may be hearing, because definitely in the New Age community, because it's still very monotheistic in the way that they see things, so their cosmology is still very monotheistic. They're seeing the goddesses as, mostly it's the goddesses, they rarely ever work with the gods, as being archetypes. And from a witch point of view, they're so much more than that. And you can get a lot of really rich life experiences by working directly with them, and that's why I emphasize working with them in Mystery Witch School 101, which is a course for you if you are new to Wicca, or you've been in Wicca for a while and you're still trying to find out how to do things, when to do things, and how to navigate your way through the terrain of the information highway out there, because it can be very overwhelming for you if you really want to know how to practice the craft and study the craft, but you don't have a teacher and you don't know what do I do first, then what do I do next, and how do I learn all of this stuff. The craft is really here to help us connect with who we really are. So if you want to connect with who you are, your deeper spiritual self, so that you can create the life that you want to create with joy, peace and happiness, take a look at Mystery Witch School 101, and the details to how you can join us is in the description field below this video. If you like the video, hit the like button, share it with your friends. Don't forget to subscribe. I'm Sandra from mysterywitchschool.com. Blessed be.